Well, good afternoon for some of you, good evening for others. It's later here on the East Coast, 5 o'clock dinner for some of you. But we're glad you're here, and we've shifted to the new time, doing it a little bit later, hoping for a little bit more interaction with the community. But we always have the recordings and the replays available. If you didn't get to see it, ask for it. We're going to start organizing our Q&A sessions again in the classroom section of school, or if you're in our platform for our where we're either doing matchmaking with you and services to help you get engaged or married, or helping you in your business and legacy and your marriage, then you're part of our marriage mastery community as well. So Epic Your Life for single to married, we're glad you're here, whatever community you're in. But we would definitely love having you participate and asking questions, because we want to serve you first. So we've had a couple questions come out, and then I'm going to actually hit a topic or two. But if you have a question, you're the priority. So we'd love to hear from you and have your questions be asked. But question number one that came out is I'm working on getting out of my way to rise up and be the best version of myself, right? Thoughts and suggestions on this was what was asked about how to do this thing. And the crazy thing is like part of the journey is discovering what your best self is, right? So what I mean by that, we are all on a journey. We're all learning to discover and understand and know who I am in the sense of my best self. And so it is crazy awesome. What that looks like for everyone is a little bit different. Now, suggestions on how to bring out the best in myself. I have little tricks and things that I've done to bring the best out in myself. One of the greatest things that I have found is to challenge myself, take myself beyond my limits. So if there's something I don't feel comfortable with, I fly towards it. I go towards it. For example, doing hard things, doing things I don't feel comfortable with, actually doing things that requires faith. We hear these sayings, right, and these cliches, and I'm not against them, but I just think there's better ways to present them. But faith over fear, right? I actually believe that it's faith that is required, not over fear, because that means that like faith overcomes fear. Actually, I believe that it actually takes fearful things that we are afraid of, in order for us to act in faith. Because if it didn't take faith, then it means it's easy. But if we're afraid, scared of the results, scared of the outcome, or stepping out on the water, right? Like the disciples faced the storm, and Peter's the one who stepped out on the water, right? Like he was still afraid, but he was willing to do hard things. And again, when we're working on creating what I want in my life, I must do hard things. I must challenge myself if I'm going to create what I want. But also, again, if it was easy, it wouldn't require faith. Think about that for a second. Just wanted you to pause. So then in my life, if I want the best to come out of me, I believe the best comes from doing hard things, doing things that I'm totally uncomfortable with, doing things that I'm afraid of, doing things that, for me even, it takes a lot of faith to step out and be willing to be bold as a leader, be able to willing to speak out. I'll tell you, it's interesting. Like I took a stand recently, Chantel and I did publicly in social media. And it's something that I've never done before. I've never taken a stand on politics in a presidential race. Just haven't. I just thought, you know what? I'm going to stay neutral. I had my beliefs, my understanding of things. And frankly, I probably was a little bit afraid of the backlash, right? Notice fear. I stepped out in faith and said, you know what? I'm going to be bold regardless of the outcome, because that's part of it. Regardless of the outcome, regardless of what people think, regardless of the backlash, I'm going to take a stand for Donald Trump, and made it public. I want America to be great again. I want to make marriage great again. And I took a stand for him because I did some research. I had actually originally in 2016, when he ran for president, I voted for him, but I didn't make it public. And I actually didn't take a stand for him. I thought he was a jerk. I did. But guess what? It's because I allowed mainstream media to influence me in believing that about him. And what's interesting is I really understood in 2020 when COVID hit that mainstream media controls people by the way they present things. And that was super evident to me about how they were presenting COVID and all these things associated with COVID and striking fear into people. Well, the same thing was happening with Trump. I did some research, dug in, watched some documentaries and some things about him, how he's helped so many people, the philanthropist that he is, and all the ways, a billionaire. Come on. That's with a B. When you reach that status, you obviously never have to work again. And you definitely don't have to get shot at and then continue to do this, right? And continue to push forward. So I made a decision, regardless of what the backlash was. I made a decision. I'm going to take a stand. I like what Trump stands for. I did my research. I think does he say stupid stuff? Yeah, so do I. But a lot of those things that people say is stupid that he says because they completely take it out of context and make him look stupid by saying one quote that he said, and they leave out all the rest of the stuff. And I'm like, man, that's what religious leaders do all the time. Take a verse out of context and use it to control people. Well, that's what the media was doing. And I fell for it. So I did my research, didn't let media influence me, studied the person, studied looked at the fruit, looked at the results in his businesses and things. And has he had struggles? Yes, and so have I. But man, he pushed through, and I really believe the reason why he's doing it for the people. Like, he's a billionaire. He doesn't have to be the president of the country. So point is, took a stand. And you know what's interesting? I haven't even really seen any backlash. Might see backlash on here. Maybe guys like, oh, I'm not going to plug into Carlos. I don't care. I know that I'm willing to step out in faith, knowing that and believing. And this is under my current understanding. This is who I believe will do the best job for our country. And I truly do believe he's going to make things great for us in 2025. I'm excited for the future of our country. I'm excited and have hope for the future of our community too at Epic Your Life, because I believe with someone like that, we can move forward and progress and have some great results, and lots of opportunities will come available and be open for us. There you go. So I took a stand on social media like that, made it public. And, same thing with even courage and confidence I had to up my game of having tattoos. I swear when I was younger, I would never ever dreamed that I would have tattoos. And now I have them. They're very purposeful for me. Just ask. I'll be glad to tell you if you're ever curious about why do you have those tattoos, Carlos? Why did you get tattoos? Again, I'm very public about these things now. And before, I can recognize that fear kept me from stepping out. But it's that fear that then we go towards right away, because then it takes faith to step out, even though we don't feel comfortable. It takes faith to do something, invest in yourself, or invest in situations where you're like, this seems impossible. Yes, amen. That's where God can come in and step in and help us to do the impossible. And that's what creates epic. If it was easy, it's not epic then. If it's easy, it doesn't require faith then. If it was easy, it wouldn't be necessarily a miracle, right? But we can do it. We can do hard things, and we get epic results when we do. The harder, the more difficult, the bigger the results, and the more powerful the more fruit that comes from it. So it's really fascinating, even in nature. Tomatoes, one time, if you go look at the life hack for tomatoes, is one of the things that they'll take a young tomato bush and they'll just smash it and crush it. And the next year, the next season, boom, it just creates so many tomatoes because it's fighting to stay alive, and it creates more fruit than ever. A lot of truth to that. I've heard people using chains on like fruit trees and kind of scarring up the bark a little bit. Go do your own research. These things I've heard, but it's just fascinating to see in nature how it ties to more fruit is to create almost like a darkness, to create a problem, create a challenge in the to have it fight through, right, to get the results. And so for me, the best comes out of me when I'm challenged and I believe and I take myself to the very edge of what I think is possible on all different levels. One of the most apparent one for me is physically, working out. I've been really pushing myself. It's working and training and dropping weight. The mental thing where I push myself, I never believed I could fast 10 days with water only. When I hit 10 days, I'm like, no wonder Jesus did 40, and no wonder millions of people have done 40 days with water only. Like, I can see the possibilities here. And guess what? Chantel and I made it a thing where we're going to fast 3 days every quarter. And this is the year where we're going to do that. And probably once a year, maybe even fast a longer term, 10 plus days. Again, because it's the mind. We're challenging the mind. And there was some fear wrapped around that. I'm going to die if I don't eat, right? Actually, you get healed, you get whole. It's lots of great benefits from it. It's amazing, amazing, amazing. And then we get rid of the stronghold of food on our life too, that we feel so controlled by things and sweets. And even, if we have, I was been borderline diabetic, and I'm just saying, like, even like in my workouts, like started to say, pushing myself to my limits. It's like, okay, I'm so exhausted. My heart rate's at 170. Can I push a little bit more? Can I do 2 more reps? Even though I'm exhausted, push the limit a little bit, which raises the bar and my ability and my belief in myself. I get stronger. I get healthier. My heart gets a little stronger. My core gets a little bit stronger from challenging different things. And again, that's the muscle. If I want to make my muscle stronger, I've got to tear it. And that means it requires a little, a subtle little tear. Nothing drastic. It's not injury, but literally that's how muscles get bigger. You challenge them to lift more weight than what they're used to, and a greater weight challenges you and that's why muscles get sore from being a little bit torn, but then they get stronger. That's how it is in life. It's real. The fear, the hurt, the pain that you've been avoiding your whole life is now something that can actually make you better. Be grateful for it. Say, problem. Woo! Let's go towards that problem. And let's celebrate when we have problems, because behind every problem is a solution. Behind every challenge is a promise. Behind every fear, God's going to give you the faith to step out on that water where you believed you couldn't. If it was easy, wouldn't take faith, I promise. So this is exciting times. So if you're in between a rock and a hard place and you're facing something very difficult, don't worry. First of all, you're not alone. That's the lie, that people believe they're alone in their challenges, their hard things, and their garbage, their junk, their trauma they've been through, their hurts, their pain. You're not alone. That's the one thing that we all have in common. We all have our junk that we've been through, our hard times, or our things that we're facing, our challenges. You're not alone, okay? And the truth is you have what it takes. You're not alone, and you have what it takes. You can do this a little bit more, right? And that challenges me to do my best and then go a little bit more. Can I do it? Yes, I can. And then do a little bit more. So these are just some thoughts and suggestions, things that I face. Well, do you know what you maybe fear at this point? Well, I fear roller coasters, or I fear heights, or I fear dogs, or I fear water, being underwater. I fear cold, ice water. I fear heat. I don't know. What is it that you fear and you think is impossible? I was watching this morning. So today, those of you that plug into our content on Epic Your Life, if you're on single to married, eventually you'll be on Epic Your Life. Once you get engaged, you graduate to the legacy. As far as Epic Your Life, that we're creating legacies and working with couples and people engaged, people married to develop their families, their wealth, their health, all these things, right? But once you get on there, you'll see that we have this product called Connection DNA to really restore connection into your very DNA of cycles and things you can create to become where connection is your lifestyle. Well, in that process, some of the things we talk about is discipline and mastering your emotions. And there's 8 weeks, 40 sessions. This week we're on week 2. And we're on session 4 today. Yep, it's Thursday. And it was about the E in Feldspar, which is having goals and targets, and the E is for emotions. So having goals and targets and victory markers, things that we can mark towards in our emotions. You're like, you have goals and emotions? Yes, absolutely. To master your emotions is self-discipline. And one of the things we talk about is breathing. And I just got sent yesterday or today, can't remember. Sorry, I can't remember. Kane Kaufman, thanks for sending it over. I love when people send me videos and things they're watching and plugging into. We believe in ice baths. Chantel and I have done them. They're amazing. And this particular one he sent me over is they go to this like cold plunge therapy thing. And it's like literally they break out the ice and it's like 0 degrees. The water's frozen. They have to cut through it. And it's super cold water. And they take a plunge in it for like 2.5 minutes. The only way you can survive that is the way you breathe. And then they said it's 36% colder when you put your head underwater too, because all the heat goes to your head, right? And that's where really, so that's even a higher level of plunging. So it's really cool to watch that, but to recognize that breathing is the key. And guess what? Breathing is the key to mastery emotions. Why am I bringing this up? Because are you afraid of cold water? That sounds extreme. You'll die if you get in that cold water. That's what they used to think. That's not true. It actually helps you and boosts your immune system, helps inflammation, gets rid of like inflammation and things that are caused by inflammation, whether it's different illnesses and diseases from inflammation, or even like fibromyalgia and even arthritis and things. It's amazing what the benefits can be from these ice plunges that people are talking about. Do your research, check it out. It's really crazy. But maybe you have a fear of that. I would die. I couldn't do that. I couldn't do it. Maybe you should. That's going to bring out the best in you. If you have this fear of this thing that you say, I'd never do, jumping out of a plane, maybe, right? Having a certain experience with a certain kind of animal because you're deathly afraid of snakes. What is it? Challenge that, because it's going to do something in you. And I remember the first time I did an ice bath, and it was really cold. It's right here. Man, it messed with my mind. It's like, is this actually good for me? Is this hurting me? Something's wrong. Your brain goes through all these fight or flight modes. Like you want to get out of there. You want to fight somebody because you're just like almost in panicky mode. So then what does it require you to do? Breathe. You got to breathe. And when you master your breathing, you master your emotions, and your belief changes in that moment. And you actually can embrace the power of the ice bath and the blessings and benefits from it. It's amazing. I go to a pretty amazing, happy place. I've been able to stay in, I think it was 40 degrees, we had ice in it. We've had it down to as cold as 35 degrees. But on average, when we do these ice baths for our retreats, it's usually on average about 40 to 45 degrees. And typically I've stayed in as long as 20 minutes. And you're like, what, 20 minutes? Is that good for you? Oh my gosh, it's so good. It feels amazing. So again, do your research, but the point is it is my mind that just becomes so clear. And don't get me wrong, when I first get in, it's like you're like you're doing all these short breaths and breathe, and you gotta control your breathing. And guess what? You control your emotions. Now I'm telling you that because that's a key even to self-discipline and doing hard things. You're going to find your breathing's going to change when you're getting stressed. I don't know if I can do this, right? Or if you're stressed, your breathing changes. It's amazing. Pay attention to your breathing, and you'll notice emotions are tied to that. So when you control your breathing and master your breathing, that's why breathing is so important. You should be practicing breathing. It's good oxygen to your brain, makes you think clear, feel clear. When you get angry, your breath's shallower, and then you don't have good oxygen, and then you don't think clear. It's all connected, y'all. Just saying. Sorry, that's a long answer, but there's a lot here to unpack about bringing out your best self. Like, There's so many different ways you can do it, but I'd say the number one thing is establish, identify things that you're not comfortable with, things that trigger you, fears, and then see what you can do to start going towards those things, to challenge yourself to do hard things. Okay? I love you. I hope that's helpful to everyone watching. I'm going to look now for some other questions here. Let's go, Trump. Oh, we got some fans. Today they did F in Feldspar. Very cool. Nathan started over. Or yeah, he's in week 1 then. The F is financial. These are setting targets and goals. All right, who else? Does anybody else have a question before I move on with some of the things I want to talk about? We're just about out of time. This is supposed to be 30 minutes, but I figure I'll go a little bit on my topic that I was 3 effective ways. Ready for this? 3 effective ways to practice validation. This has been a huge topic for us lately, and it's been probably one of our most requested things by wives to say, hey, can you help my husband validate? Can you have a conversation with him? You know why? Because here's what I was thinking about this. Like, validation is more natural for a woman because she's able to understand, first of all, the feminine or the estrogen side is more emotional and connection in emotions. And that's pretty much what validation is about, is to acknowledge the emotion and to be able to speak to that and understand that. And so by definition, validation is process of confirming and establishing truth or accuracy or legitimacy of something. It can have different meanings depending on the context, okay? But through a emotional is to confirm, such as recognizing and accepting someone's feelings, their thoughts, or their experiences, and be understandable that those thoughts and experiences are valid. Like, this is a big deal to have those thoughts and experiences and be like, am I crazy here? No. It's a very valid point that you're feeling this, and to validate someone helps them to know that they are real and know that they're not crazy in these situations. They kind of, have you ever felt that way where you're going through a hard time and you just, a lot's piling up and like, and you're like stressed? Well, when someone validates you, it's almost like they allow you to release it and someone hears you and you're not crazy. And they acknowledge what you're feeling. And then what happens is that's where validation comes in. And it's a psychological event that brings clarity and can bring peace to a person, allow them to release the stress that they're holding on to. And it's so interesting because most men, by definition, intrinsically want to fix it. So when a woman's just struggling, has some emotions or things she's dealing with, and she just wants to be validated, and the men try to fix it. I've even done this, try to fix it, and then Chantel's like, you're not hearing me. Well, what she's really saying is, you're not validating me. Man, if you've ever heard that, you're not hearing me, or you're not getting it, then that should be your trigger of understanding you're not validating her. You're not addressing the emotions. What you're doing is just either you're trying to do active listening, which is repeat back what she just said to you, like I used to do, or you're just trying to fix it. Okay, well, let's do this, and this. Or you're thinking, well, I can't. If I validate, or if I say those emotions are okay, or I understand what you're going through and those emotions must be tough or something like that, I might empower that negative thing. I don't want to empower that negative attitude. That was my hang up, right? Because I was working on, okay, I'm going to be a positive guy. I'm going to have good, good juju and good empowering person. I'm going to think positive on it, everything right. And so I'm like, wait, that can't help a person, can it? And I realized this is what helped me, the visual of this. When someone's needs validations, there's emotions and stress or frustrations. It may not be this. I'm exaggerating, obviously. But, they're feeling this. And it's like, as you validate them and it allows them to release it, look what happens. If I release something, it gives me the opportunity to receive something new. It gives me the opportunity to receive something better. It's crazy awesome. So you're helping that person by allowing them to release those emotions that they've been holding on to. And by the way, if they hold on to them too long, it can cause ulcers and cancers. And think about what even fatigues you is through your inflammation, is you holding on to something. We need to let go. We need to release things. We're called to flow. We're not called to hold on to this junk and stagnant. No, we're called to be in the flow and release like a streams of living water. Like you think a beautiful brook, streaming brook with that just tastes so good. I remember when I was a kid, squirrel, I know. But when I was a kid, we used to have this mountain. I lived in little town Safford, Arizona. We had this mountain spring, and it would, snow would melt, or they'd have that spring up above, and it would just run down this mountain. And we had these creeks going down this mountain. I just loved to go hiking around that mountain, and I would always go get a drink of water. That was the best. Just that fresh, cool, you could taste the minerals in it. Amazing, living, blessed water as it's just coming down that mountain and running across those rocks, and just clean and nice. And it's moving, it's flowing, it's cleansed, it's pure, it's good. So this is part of what we've been called to be, springs and of living water. And so we got to be in the flow. We got to release things. So how can we help people? Well, you can help your spouse by validating her. Most of the time it is her. Men, we have emotions too. And, little side note, men, most of the time when you hear a guy complain, you're like, suck it up, man. You're better than that. Toughen up. Quit being such a wimp. Right? Or you say, that ain't nothing, man. You should hear what happened to me, right? We pile stuff up. It's hilarious. With women, I witnessed this. Women will be talking, and this one woman's having a hard day and struggling with certain things and emotions. And the other woman may even touch her arm and console her a little bit. Man, that sounds very challenging. That's really hard. I can tell that's really hard for you, and that's really challenging facing those things, right? They validate the emotion. They don't try to fix it. And the person's like, oh, they heard me, right? I just said that. My wife, Chantel, oftentimes would tell me, you're not hearing me. And I literally repeat back. And that even made it worse. No, you're not hearing me. And again, finally, we're recognizing, I wasn't validating her. So then guess what? Man, I'm talking to you, but also women. You have a hard time validating other women. Guess what? Or other men, or men, your husbands. Maybe they're having a hard day, and you're trying to fix them or trying to tell them to man up instead of actually validating what they're going through. I remember Chantel validated me. She literally said, I can see how that would be confusing to you. And I was like, that's it. That's my emotion. I'm feeling confused. I want clarity. I love clarity. And I was like, yes, that's it. Thank you. And I felt so good. She heard me. She validated what I was feeling, because I didn't even know what I was feeling in that moment. And that's even why it's such a beautiful skill or art. Sometimes people are just expressing things and they don't know what they're feeling or emotions. And when you can validate them and help them recognize what they're feeling, emotions wise, they can release it, and it brings them peace. Shalom. It's like spiritual blessing, spiritual release. And like God wants to validate you. And sometimes he's going to use people, but also you have that validation from God directly. That's why we do journaling, by the way. He'll do it through his word back to you. But anyways, that's a whole nother topic. But back to the case here is like, Chantel's like, you're not hearing me. You're not hearing me. And then finally, I was like, okay, we recognized it was about validation. And then I started going like, I would try to validate it. I'm like, I don't know how to validate you right now. Can you help me? I literally did that. And guys, hear me. Mainly guys, if you're willing to say that, that is super powerful. But wives, hear me too. When your husband says that, don't say, are you kidding me? Why don't you know how to do this? You should know how to do this, right? Because that's this response. It's like gut wrenching. Like, I don't. I just open myself up and vulnerable, saying I don't know how to do this. And I literally have had that moment where I'm like, in this moment, I don't know how to validate this emotion. Can you help me? And it was interesting because Chantel expressed how she felt like, well, he should know. But then in that moment, she also realized if I'm not going to teach him, who is? And he's willing to actually ask. It's real, man. You can ask too. How can I validate you right now? How can I validate this emotion you're feeling? Because I don't know quite how to do it. But the more you do it, guess what? If you have the courage to say, I don't know how to do it, and to admit you don't know how to do something, guess what? That's powerful. Again, that makes you better because you're learning, you're teachable, you're coachable, and you're willing to say, I don't know how to do this. And you admit it, and then they can help you along in that validation. And then through it, you can become better, right? And you can learn. And just sometimes wives, the men just need to hear what you would say in that to validate. Well, Chantel did that the other day. Just say, this, I can see how that must really be frustrating to you. I was like, oh gosh, got it. That's good. And I literally would say it. I practice. I'm like, well, I can see how this must be frustrating to you. Because I think what happens, man, especially if our wives are actually attacking us, or at least we feel that way with its emotions, and like, okay, did I do something wrong? And I need to fix this because I did something wrong. And we want to, love our wives well, so we're like stuck. But really, they just want validation of the emotion. They don't need us to fix, or they don't need us to apologize, even, right? Like, oh, I did something wrong, and you say, I'm sorry. That's not validation either, by the way. Apologizing is not validation. You need to validate those emotions. Psychologically, it allows them to release, and it allows them to receive something new, allows them to have a different story. You follow me? It's very powerful. So, the power of validation. 3 ways. Sorry about that. Active listening and empathy, of course, right? Fact-based verification, and acknowledge effort and perspective. So these are different ways to validate. Practice validation. So if I'm doing active listening and then empathy, right, of the emotion, this is the main one. We listen to what they're saying, maintain eye contact. All these things, little details matter. And then we reflect back those emotions and feelings that they're having and acknowledge, like, I can see why you're feeling this way, right? You acknowledge why they're feeling that way. I can see how this must be confusing. And I can see how this must have really caused you some pain. I can see how, right? Being able to say, I can see how you would feel that way, but maybe a certain feeling that they're expressing that they're having. I can see how this probably really hurts you. That makes sense given what you've experienced. Are you listening to me? So you express, I can see how you must feel that way. That makes sense given what you've experienced. That's validation. Like, oh, okay, you do hear me. And it's interesting because lots of times Chantel said that to me. She's like, what you're doing to me right now is, no, I'm not feeling this. You're not hearing me. That's sort of famous saying. I'm like, okay, that means I'm not validating you. You say I'm not hearing you. And so you wives know, and husbands get to know, understand what they're really saying or what they're feeling in that moment when there's emotions are high. And they may not say like Chantel, maybe it's something else they say. You're not listening. Maybe that's it, right? And so what helps, why this approach is so good to active listening and having that empathy and acknowledging the emotion. This is a top way of validation. We've kind of gone over this in one of the main ones, is this approach will help individuals feel valid, understood, valued, which is truly crucial to building trust and rapport and connection. So on every level in relationships, validation psychologically is very, very important. Now, some of you may have had bad experiences doing validation. You know what? It's understandable. Maybe you feel like it didn't work and it backfired. It's a need, though, for people. Validation, recognition is another huge thing. And then consideration, having consideration. But tonight we're talking about validation, okay? But those are 3 key things for doing for others that will enhance that relationship with them and cause it to be a deeper, more meaningful, intimate relationship, which you want to have the best of the best with your spouse. That's the key. So those 3 things, validation, recognition, and consideration for others, will really take it to a deeper level. And of course, we know the 3 C's of connection, working on confidence, communication, and commitment. in your skills. You work on that for you, get better at that. Then you can connect with others in those ways. Consideration, recognition, and validation. So validation. All right. So if someone, again, expresses an overload or frustration about a workload and acknowledge their emotions by saying, it sounds like you're overwhelmed with everything on your plate. You should write that down, guys. It sounds like you're overwhelmed with everything you have on your plate. That's it. And then shut up. Don't fix it. Shut up. Don't follow up with, well, we can fix this. We can do this, this, and that. Nope, you didn't hear them then. You just took away the validation. I'm telling you, this is truth. Why? How do I know? Because I've done it. So shut the mouth. Say to them, it sounds like you're overwhelmed with everything on your plate. Maybe a hug. Love them, hold them, let them release it. And they're, oh, you heard me. Oh. It happens. It happens. And it's good. Beneficial. Okay. So how about some validation through like even some fact-based verification? So if someone, we can compare a claim or an action or process against reliable standards, data, or expectations. So this is common in validating something in a professional setting, like a business setting, right? So 3 ways that you can validate in a business setting, or excuse me, this is a way you can do it in a business setting. Because if I'm going to make valid the things that you have, we're going to ensure the accuracy, prevents errors and misunderstandings. Now, again, this is not an emotional thing or for in relationships. This is just another example of validation. And similar to recognition and validation, you can acknowledge someone's efforts and perspectives too as well, to validate those efforts and things that they're doing and making and give them recognition. They can go hand in hand, but essential for building relationships and trust. And also, you're going to build trust in a business setting if you're validating people's accuracy based on data and things you find, and then they're finding, you're comparing, you're like, look, trust and verify. It's working. Good job. Wow, this is awesome. You know you can trust them again on a more technical side for business stuff. Because validation does apply in other relationships like business and stuff too, not just in your personal connection and just in emotions. So again, another one would be the acknowledgement of effort and perspective. So how do you do this? When someone contributes, they make decisions, they take initiative we want to recognize their effort and their intent and their unique perspective. We want to acknowledge that, hey, your way is not the same as mine, but I like it. It gives me a whole nother perspective, whole nother visual, looking at it with different lenses. Wow, I can grow and learn from that as well. And this reinforces confidence and motivates continued efforts while building a sense of appreciation. And so again, part of it is even that recognition or acknowledging if, man, they took initiative and did something without you asking. That's even powerful, right? You want to acknowledge those efforts, and that creates a validation and trust and connection with them as well. Whether it's your spouse, someone at work that you work with, a coworker, or maybe even someone that you're training or teaching, or maybe even a boss. Like, you can do this. This is the power of you validating people, or even a child that you have. You're raising up a child. This is super valuable and powerful when you do this, is validation, not even just in emotions, or validation in improving their facts-based stuff and analyzing data and seeing that it's true and real, and trusting them and showing them like, good job. I see that this lines up with what you're doing. Great work. But also acknowledging an effort and perspective that they bring to the table. It's not the same as mine. We want to reward that. Or taking initiative where we didn't tell them to, and they got courage enough to go ahead and do it. That's powerful. You want to reward those things, and it will reinforce that confidence and motivates more and more confidence, and for them to have continued effort of and when you're building that sense of appreciation too and gratitude. So an example says, I really appreciate the effort you put into this project, even if the results didn't turn out as planned, right? Because they took initiative. Potentially you just praise them for taking the initiative, and your dedication is clear, right? So we show them that their efforts and their hard work is valid, even if the results didn't turn out the way they wanted, or maybe the way you were hoping for. It will encourage them to want to continue to move forward in life and in the things that they're doing. Make sense? So these are three different kinds of ways, practical ways that you can apply validation in business relationships, personal relationships, and your loved ones, right? Especially with your spouse, especially with those closest to you. But a lot of times we forget the fact that when you're faithful with the little things or faithful with those that are closest to you, you'll be made ruler over much. Like you practice, you get good at it at home, then it's going to expand out into the community, out into your church, out into your business, and it's just going to make you better. You're going to make people better by doing these things with them. Does that make sense? It's a powerful process, and I hope that you will take some of this to heart and start doing some of it, putting it into action. All right. Amen. We're designed to be a river. Thank you for that comment. What do you want me to say? Yep. That's again with validation. It's more like, how can I validate you at this time? I don't know if that's what you're meaning by that. What do you want me to say? That's probably not a good one. What do you want me to say? I don't know what to say, man. That's almost like a cop out, and it could be a rhetorical question, right? So it is very powerful and empowering if you ask, how can I validate you right now? Because I don't know how to validate, right? That's a specific thing. Because again, when you're wanting to validate, it's because you want to acknowledge the emotion. You may not quite understand what emotion they're feeling right now or what they're having. They're just having a meltdown, and you're like, oh, I don't know what emotion this is connected to. That's why I like scripts. That's why I like the one that says, I can see how you feel that way, right? That's simple. It's an emotion, feelings. I can see how you feel that way. And that makes sense given what you've experienced, right? That makes sense given what you've experienced. And then being able to say, it sounds like you're overwhelmed with everything on your plate. Those three scripts right there, golden, man. Should jot them down because it's beneficial. Okay. Very beneficial. It sounds like you're overwhelmed with everything on your plate. Well, I hope this has been helpful in the art of validation, whether in different circumstances, but most importantly, with your spouse, with those relationships that you are working on becoming closer to and more connected with. All right. I don't see any more questions, but I'm super grateful that you joined me today in this session of Q&A. And I'm Carlos, and super pumped to continue and have a very powerful year this year. 2025 coming up, and I'm excited for it. I'm ready for it. Here we go. But let's finish strong. 2024 ain't over yet. Let's do some great things, and let's change the world together. God bless you guys. Love you. Have a great week. We'll see you next week. All right. Bye-bye. Thanks for being here.